If you're struggling with chronic insomnia, you may have heard of the term sleep restriction. Now, you might think that you're already dealing with this since your sleep probably feels quite restricted at the current time. However, this term refers to an evidence-based behavioral technique that involves spending less time in bed by allotting less time for sleep. This helps to improve sleep quality and ultimately sleep duration. So if your goal is to get more sleep, how can sleep restriction help you get more sleep? Well, this is what I'll be talking about in today's video. Hi, I'm Martin Reed. If you have insomnia, I offer sleep coaching programs that will give you all the skills and support you need to enjoy better sleep for the rest of your life. You can learn more at insomniacoach.com. So returning back to my opening question of how sleep restriction can help you get more sleep, it's important to understand a little bit about how sleep works and what turns short-term sleep disruption into a longer-term problem. Ultimately, sleep is a core biological process. It's something the body always does, and our ability to sleep is not something that we can ever lose. If we remain awake for long enough, we will sleep. The urge to sleep builds with every minute of wakefulness. So when we first get out of bed in the morning after a good stretch of sleep, sleep drive will be low. As the day progresses, sleep drive gets stronger. And so by the time we go to bed, sleep drive has usually reached a strong enough point to help us fall asleep and stay asleep. In a way, this process is a bit like blowing air into a balloon. Every puff of air we blow into the balloon represents the buildup of sleep drive. Eventually, the balloon becomes full of air and a final puff bursts the balloon and we sleep. When the balloon is empty, there's no sleep drive, so we're not going to sleep. When the balloon has some air in it, we might get a bit of sleep, but it might take a while to fall asleep, and that sleep might be quite short, quite fragmented, and feel less restorative. So ultimately, we want to be going to bed just as that balloon is about to burst, when sleep drive has reached a point whereby sleep really can't be avoided any longer. Now, if you've lived with insomnia for a long time, you might be asking why sleep drive doesn't seem to be working for you, why you can be awake for so long during the day and night, and yet still find it hard to fall asleep or to sleep through the night. Well, the answer to this can be found in the arousal system, since the arousal system is capable of temporarily suppressing sleep. Ultimately, the arousal system is a survival mechanism. If you were a caveman and you saw a saber-toothed tiger prowling around outside your cave during the night, you wouldn't want sleep drive making you fall asleep, since you'd probably end up being a nice meal. In this example, the arousal system prevents sleep from happening in order to protect us. So in cases of chronic insomnia, we typically see behaviors that weaken sleep drive and increase arousal, and this in turn makes sleep more difficult. A common behavior that can weaken sleep drive is allotting too much time for sleep, either by spending too much time in bed each night compared to the amount of sleep you're getting, or getting out of bed at a different time each day while going to bed around the same time each night. And this can mean there is less time for sleep drive to build during the day. Common behaviors that increase arousal include allotting too much time for sleep or spending too much time in bed, again, going to bed before we're sleepy enough for sleep, and spending a lot of time in bed awake, trying to sleep, feeling frustrated, angry, scared, or worried about sleep. With this in mind, we can see that if we're able to spend less time awake in bed, only go to bed when we're sleepy enough for sleep, and get out of bed at the same time each day, we can help strengthen sleep drive and lower arousal, because less time awake during the night usually means less time awake during the night, worrying about being awake during the night. And this also helps to weaken any negative association between the bed and unpleasant wakefulness. In effect, the more time we spend in bed asleep rather than awake, the more we associate the bed with sleep rather than wakefulness. When we associate the bed with sleep rather than wakefulness, our brain learns that the bed isn't a threat, and this can further weaken the arousal system. So now we've covered how sleep restriction can help to build sleep drive and lower arousal. Scheduling less time for sleep builds sleep drive and helps overpower the arousal system. Scheduling less time for sleep also means less time dealing with unpleasant wakefulness during the night, and this helps weaken the arousal system. Ultimately, allotting an appropriate amount of time for sleep means more time for you to be filling that balloon with air. You want to fill that balloon to bursting point to get the best sleep possible. Less sleep drive means a floppy balloon, which means more difficult and less satisfying sleep. So, how much time should you be allotting for sleep? Well, this is going to be different for everyone. Quite simply, you want to be allotting enough time for sleep so you aren't depriving yourself of sleep, while also not setting yourself up for excessive wakefulness during the night. If you typically average, say, 5 hours of sleep, but spend 8 hours in bed each night, we can see that you're giving yourself the opportunity of up to 3 hours of often unpleasant wakefulness each night. So in this example, reducing the amount of time allotted for sleep to somewhere around 5.5 to 6 hours might be a good idea. Once you decide how much time to allot for sleep, give yourself a final out of bed time and an earliest possible bedtime. So if you decide to allot 6 hours for sleep, your final out of bed time might be 6 a.m. and your earliest possible bedtime would be midnight. You'd then try to avoid going to bed before midnight, but always be out of bed by 6 a.m. every day. Now you've given yourself at least 18 hours for sleep drive to build each day. That's the difference between that 6 a.m. out of bedtime and your earliest possible bedtime of midnight. In the short term, this will lead to a more intense sensation of sleepiness as bedtime approaches, something that by itself can be very reassuring and help reduce sleep-related worry. And it helps reduce the amount of time it takes to fall asleep. By default, you'll also be spending less time awake during the night because you're scheduling less time for sleep. Over the medium term, sleep quality improves, and as sleep quality improves, we typically experience less arousal, less sleep-related worry. As arousal falls and sleep quality improves, conditions are right for us to get a bit more sleep. If and when that happens, we can then start to increase the amount of time we allot for sleep, perhaps by adding 15 minutes or so. If and when we start to fill our newer schedule with sleep, we can then extend it again. Here's the thing about sleep. We can't make ourselves fall asleep on command, and we can't make ourselves sleep for a certain amount of time. However, we have a lot of control over sleep quality. We can improve sleep quality by giving ourselves less opportunity for extended periods of wakefulness during the night, and giving ourselves plenty of opportunity to build sleep drive during the day by allotting an appropriate amount of time for sleep and by getting out of bed at the same time every day. As the quality of our sleep improves, we usually start to feel better during the day. We start to regain confidence in our natural ability to sleep. We might start to worry a little bit less about sleep. And this is when we often start to see sleep duration increase, even though we started this whole process by allotting less time for sleep. So I hope you found this short video helpful. If you did, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. and click the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I do try and share a new sleep snippet video every week. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, or suggestions for a future video, please leave a comment below, or you can email me directly. My email address is hello@insomniacoach.com. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'd like to leave you with this important reminder. You can sleep.